Okay, here I go. I want to go back to the late 80s when leadership at the organization I was at did an assessment of all its leaders and future leaders. And they used the Myers-Briggs assessment. And there's others, over the years, the Gallup and a few others. But I wanted to just kind of mention not only how I assessed at that time, I have the results in front of me, and I want to go over those. And the reason why is because I really haven't changed that much. And what's really unique is I used the same behavior, leadership skills, and so on raising my three children when they were very young. I mean, we're talking, my oldest son was only probably, let me see here, he was only about 12, maybe 15 at the most. And that's when I really got into psychology and leadership skills and assessments. And I wanted the independence of a professional versus me trying to figure out my kids and their futures and trying to control their talent skills, which I didn't want to do because I'm one of 11 kids, and my father especially had high expectations of what we should do and so on. And some of them hit, some of them didn't hit. But I didn't want to be in that situation not knowing that I could make my own decisions and my own choices. And that's what I mean by picking the right horse. In other words, you can't pick your family, but you could pick your employer, you could pick your wife, you could, whatever, your relationships. And it's taken me many, many years to realize that I could walk away from a bad, toxic situation, a bad boss, a bad employer, a bad client, but you never walk away from your kids, okay, and your family. You might have to adjust, but you got to have principles and values and so on. So I want to get back to how I scored at that time, and the Myers-Briggs. You could actually go online and get that and download it. It's free. It's a free assessment, and it's just being open and honest about yourself on what your game plan is. Because the more honest you are, the better the results, or let's just say the assessment comes back to you. So I'm a ENTJ, and I don't have the actual meaning of it, but I'm sure it's somebody that's a gregarious person. All right, extroverted is the E. And I'm sitting in the car here waiting for a few things, so I'm just going to go off on this YouTube. But here's what I rated out at 5% of the general population. And the title of ENTJ is the Field Marshal. Now, back in 1987, when this report I pulled out of 1987, there's a quadrant of the leaders and what type of quadrant they're in and so on. And I was all alone. As a ENTJ. And I didn't feel lonely. But I knew I was the president of the company at the time. So, I wanted the responsibility and the decision-making process. So here's what it reads out. The field marshal is able in studies, leads activities, usually good in anything that requires reasoning and intelligent talk, such as public speaking, are usually well informed and enjoy adding to their fund, F-U-N-D, of knowledge, may sometimes be more positive and confident than their expert experience in an area warrants. Let me reread that. May sometimes be more positive and confident than their experience in an area warrants. All right. The first item is best described as. So in this assessment, this person is hearty, frank, commanding, goal-orientated, in charge, logical, analytical, and decisive. Those are the best described. And I'm going to agree with that. But there's also a negative aspect of that, too. If you're perceived as hearty, frank, commanding, and so on. Maybe even threatening. Here's can be outstanding at. In other words, here's the pros of the field marshal. Taking over groups, harnessing people to distant goals like a vision, communicating, visualizing where an organization is going, communicating that vision to others, organizing units into smooth functioning systems, planning for short-term and long-range objectives. That's me all the way. And I've been in business for 50 years. So I'm agreeing with this. Probably more goal-orientated to the point where you meet your goals, you achieve your goals, and in my world, you surpass your goals. Now, what do I enjoy? Conduct governed by logic, the broad picture, complex problems to solve, new ideas, well thought out plans, well engineered operations. That's why I'm a business guy. I love business, I love teams, and I think a lot of that has to do with my upbringing in sports and goals of winning in sports. Now we're going to talk about what am I impatient with, or people such as the field marshal. Impatient with inefficiency, repetition of error, confusion, half measures such as half-assed, decisions based on feelings. I got to see the facts. And as I've learned over the years, actually, it takes both. And I will talk about that in a little bit. Now, the potential pitfalls of a leader such as myself and others, field marshals. Intent on making decisions, can overlook relevant facts and important details. Naturally critical, may fail to develop an appreciation for others. That's true too. Okay, so after 40 years, what am I saying? I'm saying I can see this, and I've paid the price, the pros and the cons. I'll tell you this, I'm proud of it. I'm proud of who I am. I'm much happier working as a team and working with high performers. I'd have to say that. I like people that are driven, ambitious, work well with a team, like to win. I'm impatient with complacency, laziness. I have high expectations, and I'm realizing after all this time, you really find out over time, colors show who's who, who's there. And you know, there's a term that we used to use back in the day, and they might use it today, is, and this is why you see the hiring practices of today is hire slowly, fire quickly. And I have an example. I'm talking to a client right now that hired someone They didn't do their due diligence. This is a founder and entrepreneur of a very large company. They're in their 70s, and they wanted to bring an outside professional to be the president and run the business. He didn't do his homework. And after 9 months, he realized he justified letting this guy go. And you're talking about, high six figures running a business. Now, the reputation's going to get out there right away by this ex-employee. And I deal with a lot of people that have been laid off, especially white-collar professionals that are looking for a new future. Well, situations like this, laying this guy off after 9 months and maybe spending a year, you know how many years you lose in being critical and cynical about a bad hire? And that's what I mean by make sure you pick the right horse. It's devastating, man. And it sets the company back, and you don't trust anybody. It's like going through a divorce or a betrayal of a spouse. It's terrible. It could take years. Some people never come back from something like that. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is raising my kids, knowing that I was the field marshal. Of the 3 kids, I have 1 daughter and 2 sons. My daughter didn't like my style. She was the youngest. She didn't like the fact that I was in charge. In fact, she would use the words, "Dad, you're trying to control me." I did not like that because I didn't like my father trying to control me. So that was a swear word. That was profanity in my word. My 2 boys, they bought in. They wanted to be leaders, and they are leaders at this time. Now, knowing that I know this now, and that I'm in my 70s and my kids are all in their 40s and they have grandkids, now I'm asking them, hey, what kind of lessons did I give you? And you know what? They don't have time to say, Dad, you were an asshole. No. They're telling me not what I want to hear, because I've asked them, hey, I know what I've done wrong. I know what sins I've committed. And it's such a beautiful thing when you know you did something right when you raised your kids. And it wasn't easy because I was single while my kids were growing up. And by the way, I had them all go to industrial psychologists in early of high school before they made decisions. And I put them all on incentives. If you do this, you get these grades, this is what you get when you graduate. And yes, it was financial incentives. And when I was in trouble, I would always ask, who are your friends? I want your top 10 friends, their names, their phone numbers, and their parents' names, and where they live. All 3 of them. Guess what? The oldest one, he got in trouble. He went 16, 17. Tried to tell me what to do. Drank a little too much. He was missing. I got a call from one of the family members saying they can't find Luke. They don't know where he is. I found out. I called a few of the guys. No answer, until I got to Sean. Sean, I threatened Sean. Sean, you better tell me where Luke is. Otherwise, I want to talk to your parents. He blinked. And now we're best of friends, and he's in his 40s. Guess where Luke was? Passed out. By the time I got to their home, their mother's home, the ambulance was there. And they brought him to the hospital. Basically, he was wasted. Alcohol. And that's when we found out, after I sent him to Hazelden, to find out what he was allergic to. And here he was allergic to alcohol. Fantastic. That process of ambulance, hospital, all the way to assessment was $1,000. He graduated, I think, a year or 2 years later from high school. And I met with him one-on-one. I said, okay, Luke, you earned this over the 4 years. And he goes, well, Dad, that's not our agreement. And I said, what do you mean? That's not our agreement. There's $1,000 missing. Oh, yeah. Don't you remember that night? Don't you remember that night when you told the doctor that you're old enough that you could make your own decisions? And I says, Doc, shut the door. He'll take the test within 5 minutes. Doc, come on in. Do the assessment. That was a $1,000 bill back in the 90s. I took it off his achievement game plan financially, which came off his spending money for college. So I'm telling you, and nowadays, what do they have? They have coaches, third-party coaches that you're going to spend $15,000 on what colleges should they belong to or what colleges should they select, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, the parents are involved, but it's always good to get a third party because the kids are going to be more open. But I'll tell you, it's hard to get in these good schools today. They got to get grades. They got to get the grades. I wasn't a grade guy. I didn't like school. I liked sports and partying. And I paid for it. So I was on academic probation many times in high school and college. So I just want to talk about Myers-Briggs, how useful it was for me back in the day, but not only in leadership skill set, but in raising your kids. Go online, Myers-Briggs. Myers is spelled M-Y-E-R-S, Briggs, B-R-I-G-G-S. You're going to learn something. Have your kids do it. See what happens. It's pretty awesome. So that's my story, and I'm proud of it. And as you can see, that's why I'm talking about it, is because, hey, this is good to know because everybody's got some issues raising their kids. And now my kids are in their 40s, and I got grandchildren, and I love these guys. These kids, I'm watching the parents, see how they're going to match up. That's why I asked the kids, what lessons do you learn from me? And they're going to carry them on. In fact, better. My kids are much better than I am. And I'm hoping that my grandkids are, next generation is going to be better than them. Bottom line is responsible, accountable, loving, compassionate, respectful kids and people. Because today, they're adults. So God bless. This is Rock. Always bring joy. We'll talk to you again.